fifth graders, welcome to your math lesson for today. For today, you will need your math resource binder, your 5B textbook, your 5B workbook, paper, and pencil. So go ahead and pause and go get those things if you need to, and then come on back. So at this point, we're actually kind of coming up on that DDI. I know that we've been talking about it a lot. But it's going to be Thursday, so we're, less than a week. So all this practice that we've been doing leading up to this is going to be helpful as you come to that test and take a look at it. So here's our practice problem for today. So go ahead and pause. Thank you for my jiggling right now here. And then come on back or I'll read it to you first, I guess. There were 797 people at a camp. They were divided into cabins of 22 people each. So we have two questions. How many cabins were there? How many people were left? So go ahead and pause, give it a shot, come on back and see how you did. So divided, that's a great clue for us there. Divided is telling us this is going to be a division problem. So we're going to do that division. Just do the long division. 797 divided by 22. Goes in 3 times. 3 times 22 is 66. We subtract and get 13. And bring down our 7. How many times now? 4 times. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times. Oh, I'm way off. Yee, I'm at 6 times. Yikes, yikes. Hopefully you were on the other end saying, not 4. What is she talking about? Okay. 6 times 2 is 12. Carry the 1. 6 times 2 is 12. Plus 1 is 13. And we subtract with a remainder of 5. So how many cabins were there? 36. How many people were left? That remainder there is how many people were left. 5. So again, how'd you do? If that was confusing, uncertain, office hours, come see us, right? Come see us and ask for help, okay? But you will definitely see a problem like that on this upcoming exam, okay? So our objective for today, we're going to continue with decimals. We're going to be multiplying, I should have said multiplying decimals by 10, 100, and 1,000, okay? You'll find these notes in your math resource binder, multiplying a decimal by tens, hundreds, thousands. So you should get that out. We're going to start, though, not by filling up those notes. We'll get there very soon. But taking a look at some things together. So I'm going to flip you guys around, and we'll kind of get set to be at a point where we can fill in those notes. So we're just looking at this first part here of multiplying by 10. So let's just say we're doing 3 and 28 hundredths times 10. So if we follow our rules of multiplication that we've been working on, let's just go through the process. 0 times 8, so we can just put that 0 in to hold our place. And then 1 times 8 is 2. 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 3 is 3. We look 1, 2, 1, 2. So that means this answer is 32 and 8/10. Okay, let's try another one. Let's do 5 and 273 thousandths times 10. So again, we're just going to write it out and then do our multiplication. So we find that we get 52 and 73 hundredths. Let's try one more. 132 and 4/10 times 10. So again, we're going to write it out and then do our multiplication. So 4, 2, 3, 1. Again, in terms of what I'm doing here, I'm just following what we were practicing earlier. Okay, so this is nothing new. Okay? Okay, so now I want you to look at these 3 problems with these 3 answers and see if you notice anything, any patterns at all with our decimal point in particular. Looking at our decimal point here to here, do you notice anything? Here to here, here to here. Hopefully what you're noticing is that in each case, it's barely showing up, but you can see it. Our decimal point is moving 1 to the right. Here it was between the 3 and 2, and now it's between the 2 and the 8. Here it's between the 5 and the 2, and here it's between the 2 and the 7. Between the 2 and the 4, and then over here, we can't really see it, but we can imagine, right? If we're going to put a decimal point at the end of in a whole number, it's going to be at the end there, which we don't need, but in this case, it's moved 1 to the right. Okay, so if we're looking at our notes here, that actually is the rule that we can apply. When a decimal is multiplied by 10, we move the decimal point 1 place to, this is hard to see, the right. Okay, this is our rule, 1 place to the right. So we can apply this as we're going. It really should be able just to move things to the right. Okay? You might already be thinking a little bit about hundreds, but let's do a couple and see if we notice a pattern again. So let's try 15 and 257 thousandths times 100. So again, if we just start by doing the multiplication vertically, we add those zeros, and then we're going to just multiply across, okay? Right? 7, 5, 2, 5, 1. 1, 2, 3 in our problem, so 1, 2, 3 in our answer. So that tells us we end up with 1,525 and 7/10. Let's try one more before we try and conclude a pattern. How about 323 and 42 hundredths times 100? Okay, so we're going to do our multiplication vertically, just like we did. And again, our zeros hold our place. And then we multiply. There are 2 decimals, so 2 decimals, which tells us that our answer is 32,342. So as we compare these, do we notice a pattern? 1, 2. 1, 2. So our decimal point went from here to here in our answer. Here to here in our answer. And again, if it's a whole number, right, we're going to have it be at the end, which we wouldn't include. But again, this is our rule. We can apply this rule. When a decimal is multiplied by 100, we move the decimal point 2 places to the right. And you'll actually notice, right, we have 1 0 and we're going 1 place. 2 zeros and we're going 2 places. So if we were to follow the pattern, what do you think is going to happen when there are 3 zeros? Yeah, when a decimal is multiplied by 1,000, we move it 3 places to the right. And we could carry this on. If we're multiplying by 10,000, where there's 4 zeros, we're going to go 4 places to the right. And this is going to be true. You could keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and this is going to keep being the rule. So this is really the rule that the set of rules that we're applying for today's work, okay? We're multiplying by 10, and I don't want us, I was demonstrating using vertical multiplication, but it's not something that I want us to do with today's work. For today's work, we really should just be working on moving that decimal point to the right. And it should be pretty speedy. Like there are going to be workbook problems that you're going to be doing today, or textbook problems that you're going to be doing today, and it should go quickly. You shouldn't be thinking super hard. We're just bumping that decimal point over, okay? So let's go ahead and open to page 24 in our textbooks, page 24, and we're going to do our practice, having that paper out as well. So we're going to start with number 1. And I'm going to demonstrate this, but I'm not going to have us do much with me demonstrating because I think and I hope that we should go pretty quickly with this. So 1A, we're asked to multiply. So if we're multiplying 6/10 times 10, we're moving that decimal point 1 to the right. which would be, I'm just going to put this down here, 6 with a decimal point at the end, which we don't say, right? So our answer is just 6. So why don't you try B and C and see how you did. So pause and come on back. So 8/10, we're moving the decimal point 1 to the right, so you should get 8. 9/10, we're moving the decimal point 1 to the right. You should get 9. Okay, I'm going to guide you through D. So we have 200ths times 10. Again, that decimal point just goes 1 to the right. So now we see it here, which means our answer is 2/10, right? We went 1 over. So why don't you pause and try E and F? Come on back and see how you did. So if we're looking at 400ths and we go 1 to the right, we end up at 4/10. 300ths, we go 1 to the right, we end up at 3/10. As I'm sure you're guessing, I'm going to guide us through G, and then you can try H and I. So again, we're moving that decimal point 1 to the right, which means our answer is now 500ths. So we've moved it 1 over. So go ahead and pause and try H and I, and then come on back and see how you did. So we're going 1 to the right here, which is 600ths. 1 to the right here, which is 700ths. So fifth graders, as you're doing this movement, you're going to have to really make sure that you're keeping track of zeros, right? And making sure you have the right number of zeros, because the place value is going to be really important as we're working on this these problems, okay? So keep that in mind. So we're actually going to skip on down to 4, which is a similar process, okay? We're just dealing with slightly more complicated numbers, but we'll walk through. So we'll do some together, and then I will have you do some on your own, much like we've been doing before. So 4A, we're multiplying 1200ths by 10. So that means we're going to go 1 to the right, which is, I shouldn't be putting the equal sign there because that's not quite what's happening. 1 and 2/10. Okay, B. I have to write 10 so that it's very clear. So we're going to do 1 to the right. So what do we get? 68/100ths. How about C? 1 to the right is 3 45/100ths. I would like you to pause and try D, E, and F on your own, and then come on back and see how you did once you try D, E, and F. So here you should have gone 1 to the right and gotten 20 5/10 for D. 1 to the right gets you 32 1/10 for E. 1 to the right is 14 39/100ths. All right, we're going to try G together, and then I'm going to have you do the rest by yourself. We did some problems like this as we were warming up, but 7 5/10 times 10. The rule still applies. We're moving that decimal point 1 to the right, but we're not going to write our answer as 75 and then a decimal point, or 75 and a decimal point and a 0 even. We just write it as 75. So when we move it over, we can just call it 75. So why don't you try H and I, and then come on back and see how you did. So again, we're going 1 to the right, so you should have gotten 104 for H. 1 to the right, and you should have gotten 118 for I. So as we're working, right, fifth graders, it's that simple. When we're multiplying by 10, we shouldn't be writing any kind of vertical multiplication. We should just be moving that decimal point to the right, okay? So we're going to apply our next rules by taking a look at page 26. So we're actually skipping a page for now. We'll come back to it. But we're going to go to page 26 and work on these remaining rules, okay? So you'll look here, right? We're multiplying by 100, we're multiplying by 1,000. We have to pay attention to our number of zeros in order to make sure that we're doing it correctly, okay? So 11a, we're multiplying 3,000ths times 100. So I see 2 zeros here, which tells me I need to go 2 decimal places to the right, which is 3/10. Okay. I'd like you to, we're going to do B together, actually. B is a little bit tricky, but we'll work on it. Okay, so we're multiplying 3 and 2/10 by 100. So we should be thinking, okay, we need to go 2 decimal places to the right, okay? Unfortunately, we currently don't have 2 decimal places. But remember, with decimals, there's all these, like, you could just add zeros on and on and on and on, and it wouldn't change the value, okay? It would be maybe not the best use of your time, but you can add zeros at the end and it won't change the value. So in this case, since we know we have to go 2 decimal places to the right, we're going to put in that 0 there, okay? So that means our answer is 320. So why don't you pause and try C and come on back and see how you did. So we're multiplying by 100, so we go 1, 2 over. So we should have gotten 132 and 5/10. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look at D. We're now multiplying by 1,000, which is 3 zeros. So we're going to go 3 places to the right. So we're going to run into a similar problem here, right? We go 1, 2, 3. And you might think, well, now what? Remember, if we have like a bubble blank here, then just pop in that 0. Okay, so that means that our answer here is 90. We should get 90. Okay. So for both of these next ones, for both E and F, you're going to have to do what we've done here, which is add a 0 in order to get your answer, or maybe more than 1 0. So I want you to try it, to pause and see how many zeros you think you need to add in order to get your answer. And then once you've got them, come on back and see how you did. Okay, so we had 3 and 62/100ths times 1,000. So we should have gone 1, 2, 3 to the right, which tells us we have to add a 0. So our answer here is 3,620. Okay, how'd you do? Hopefully that one didn't get you. 13 and 4/10 times 1,000. I should have made more space for myself. 1, 2, 3. So we actually need to add 2 zeros, and you end up with 13,400. Okay. Okay. So fifth graders, these are a pretty good gauge for some of the work that you're going to do today in your practice work and in your homework as well. We also are going to do a couple of sample problems that are going to be similar to some things you're going to see in the workbook, but I want to make sure that you're prepared and ready for it. Okay. So in addition, so you'll see a lot of problems today that where you're going to be asked to multiply by 10, multiply by 100, multiply by 1,000. And so you should do what we've been doing. You should be able to follow that same process and move your decimal point based on the number of zeros that you're multiplying by. You're also going to see some problems though that look like this. So you might say 54 and 32/100ths times what equals 543 and 2/10. So whatever goes here should be a 10 or a 100 or a 1,000. So we have to compare how many spaces did the decimal point move here. Here it was between the 4 and the 3. Here it's between the 3 and the 2. How many spaces did it move? Just 1, which means our answer should have just 1 0. Okay, so we're going to write 10 here. What if we had so we compare these two numbers and we say, how many spaces did the decimal point move? Here it's between the 3 and the 5. Here it's between the 6 and the 3. How many spaces did it move? And you could even write on this and say, okay, now it's here. So how many spaces did it move? 2. So I want 2 zeros. Okay. What if we had 4 2/10 times what equals 4,200? So maybe in this case you want to look at this number because it's got all the digits that we need. So remember, if we see a whole number here, that means that the decimal point would be at the end, right? We don't write that, but that's what we imagine. So here, the decimal point is at the end. Here, it's between a 4 and a 2. So how many decimal places did it move? 3. So our answer here would be 1,000. Okay. So you're going to see some problems that are like these today as well, where you're going to have to compare the two sides and say, okay, how many spaces did the decimal point move? And then that'll tell you how many zeros. In other words, it'll tell you if you should have a 10 or a 100 or a 1,000, right? Because again, 1 0 means we move it 1 to the right. 2 zeros means we move it 2 to the right. 3 zeros means we move it 3 to the right. And we could keep on going and going and going if we wanted. 4 zeros means 4 to the right, okay? We're not practicing that, but okay, pay attention now because I'm going to tell you what you guys have for practice and what you have for homework, and it's a little bit, it's not a lot of it tricky, but it's a little bit tricky. So for homework, for practice, there's going to be an attachment, which you're going to practice, and by now, again, you should know the routine. First of all, we've already kind of gone through checkpoint 1. How did today's lesson go? If it went great, then move right on to practice. If you're feeling like it was tricky, come to office hours, okay? Then do your practice work, and you can check your work with the key. See if you can correct your mistakes. And if you're struggling to correct your mistakes, then come to office hours and ask for help. Or even if you got them all right, but it wasn't like, didn't feel super seamless, then come to office hours. We're here to help. We're ready to coach you and help you out. So make sure you visit. Okay, now in terms of homework, this is where it gets a little bit funky. You're going to do workbook page 13, just number 1. Okay, so you're going to do the first problem on workbook page 13. You're also going to do all of workbook page 14. This is in the instructions, but I just want to make it really clear. So I should be getting 2 pictures from you. The first picture should be just of number 1 for workbook page 13. The second picture should be all of workbook page 14. And this is the page that you're going to see problems like the ones we were just doing, like at the very end. Both of those pages will have problems like the whole lesson. Okay? Okay, so again, ask for help if you need it, and we're looking forward to seeing your work. Thanks, fifth graders.